Hey everyone, it's Jim
and Charles
from Mellow Amps. And we're just about done populating the main PCB. Next up is the large filter caps. These are the 390 microfarad 450 volts. And caution when you're working around these. These are supplied discharged, but if for some reason, whatever the reason is, I don't care. If you put a charge on these, they can actually be deadly. So handle them with extreme care. Don't for fun just charge them up or put them on a big cap tester or anything like that. It could create a real hazard. So,
if you're ever unsure about a capacitor, discharge it first using a discharge tool or by shorting out the leads.
Yeah, but as they're supplied to you, they're perfectly safe. You can handle them. So, of course, it's pretty easy to figure out where the caps go. We're going to look for the negative band.
Same rules as the other capacitors. And these are called a snap-in type. So instead of having a long wire lead, it actually has more of like a little finger that goes down through the board.
Yeah, and it's going to do a little bit of a grab. Let me see if I can get it on camera and show you the installation. So I get one leg in and then the other in, and they're just going to sit there loosely. So we'll get them both on. Now these are fairly big and heavy, so we're going to want to prop up the board. Now I have this lovely little block that I use for all kinds of stuff on the bench.
That is pretty much perfectly sized for this.
Yeah. So if you want the caps to sit nice and flat, you really have to block it up pretty close to level.
Or have somebody hold it in the right spot for you.
Yeah, and I've got the iron heating up to 375 C, which is 700 Fahrenheit. I'm going to put just a little bit of flux. It's a little bit bigger lead to solder, so I'm putting a little bit more than a small component, but not much. And we're just starting we're just starting on the bench, so everything is a little mixed up, but we'll get going properly in just a minute. We're going to load a little solder. Now this is a fairly big component we're connecting, so we're going to actually press a little bit firmer. I'm going to put a drop of solder in there.
There we go.
And it's starting to flow out, so we're going to fill. We're going to hold for about a full second, and we're off. Now we're going to move to the other cap. Remember how earlier in the build I said let's hop around and not put all the heat at once on a component? So big capacitors like this that take a little longer to solder in, we'll be even more careful to hop around. And of course you can't see the other side of the board, so you gotta get it right on this side. And there's enough mass there. You see how the solder isn't instantly flowing out because I've got to heat everything in the area, and I got to be fast because you don't want to put a lot of heat on a capacitor. So whatever you do, don't hold the iron on here forever while you have a sip of coffee. And let's take a quick look at that.
Okay, well that's looking really good. They're sitting nice and flat. Let's take a closer look at our joints here. And
most importantly, let's check the polarity.
Are they on the right way? Well, the polarity is negative. You can't really see it too well on the camera, but the
band's there.
The band is on this side. The negatives are pointing backwards. That's correct. That's what you want. And these caps are not going to blow up whenever we turn them on.
Okay, well let's go and grab the choke. Okay, so we've been building up to the last component. So as you can tell, we've gone from small to larger. Now we're going to put the choke on, and before we bolt it on, we're going to get it prepped, and that just means we're going to get a little bit of shrink, and the hole is a little off center. So we're going to go ahead and cut a piece of black shrink that's about 1.5 inches or 40 millimeters is going to be good. And go ahead and load it onto your leads. And Charles, would you say we're almost in the home stretch?
Almost there, yeah.
Yeah. So right about this time of the build, I always say it's time to start thinking about what your first track is going to be. Because when you bring this preamp to life, now I'm not talking about the first track to make sure both channels are working and the test workup that we're going to do later in the build series, but the track that you're going to have the volume set perfectly. You're going to have, the children are going to be in bed if you've got kids. The dog's going to be in its dog bed. You're going to have a little drink at your side, whatever your beverage of choice is, and you're going to have a piece of music you're familiar with, that you love, that that has all sorts of good qualities to highlight your new piece of gear. And the reason why this moment is so important is, yes, you've brought a great sounding preamp to life, but you also have an opportunity to really hear it critically for the very first time. Your brain's has never heard this preamp before. And it's going to take it a little while to get used to what it sounds like. And when it gets used to it, it will be now the new normal. It'll be a great new normal, but it'll be in the new normal. But the first 2 or 3 tracks, that's your chance to really hear it for the first time with a sort of a fresh listen. And so choose those tracks really carefully. And I have about a half a dozen on my list. Charles, you have a half a dozen on yours?
Yeah, so just to quickly reiterate this again. And we're dropping stuff off the work table. You see how we're off center here? We want to try and keep it roughly around there so we can go through the hole here without straining the wires. So we're going to go ahead and get this shrunk.
Okay.
And now we want to feed the wires through the board and get this lined up so we can get it bolted on. So we're going to go ahead and drop these through. Oh, apparently I have your phone go off.
Yeah, we've got an orange alert, I think. Or is it a tsunami alert?
Oh, it looks like it's just a test of the system. All right, so now...
So we don't need to head to higher ground?
Not yet. We actually just had an extreme weather event here. Well, it's happening still right now, but mainly last night.
A cyclonic bomb.
Yeah.
And the power went out, of course, in the middle of the night. But as far as we know, we didn't suffer any major damage.
Okay.
But we're also not on the windward coast, so... Okay, so... Let's just get these started.
Yeah, this can be a little bit tricky because of the weight on it, but just take your time.
Yeah, and if you need a hand, grab your partner.
Grab a friend.
Grab a friend. Charles and I mostly work on our benches alone, but every once in a while we say, have you got a second? And yeah, of course, we always have a second. So
the positioning of this isn't super critical, but for neatness, try and keep it straight, keep it aligned.
I'm going to, because it's fairly close to the fuse holder, I'm going to actually pull, you see how it will move in and out? I'm going to pull it back towards the outer edge, and then I'm going to snug it down. Now come back with a wrench and tighten, the bigger components should be tightened on fairly firmly. So give it a nice tighten, and then we're almost done. So this is going to be quick. We're going to solder to L1. L is just the designator for a choke.
And it doesn't matter which lead goes where. It goes in one way and out the other. So
I'm going to show you how I like to, let me get you on camera, how I like to size wires to their pads. You see, this is how we really would like it to go.
but we want it a little bit lower than that because there's not a lot of space between the board and the top plate. So either have it a bit lower or have it so you can curve it around.
So something
just like that.
Something like that. And I've got a little bit of room, so I'm going to cut it here. And I'm going to strip, and then it should snug it up just nicely. And somewhere on the bench we have a stripper. And your lead does not need to be long because it's
just going through a 2mm board.
Yeah.
Now, if you have trouble getting these leads through, because it is stranded wire, you can give them a little tin first, just not much solder on there. Otherwise, it won't actually go through the hole.
Yeah. In fact, I would suggest that you try to get them through without any tinning and just take your time and give them a nice, careful twist. And then we're going to position them. So we're going to do a little bit of maneuvering to get them sort of flat. And I think I'm going to do one first. Oh, that was close.
This can be a little bit tricky. Just take your time with it.
Yeah. And I maybe just tiny little bit tight, but I don't know. Maybe not. Maybe I'm just perfect. There we go. We're in. Okay. Now we're not going to fool around, are we? Nope. We're going to bend. I've just bent the wire on the other side. Oh, look at that. It's going to be perfect. And I'm going to block up this side so I can work over here. And there is our lead right there. So I'm going to get a little tiny dab of flux in there. And we'll hold for a second, and Bob's your uncle. Okay, I think you know what you're doing. You got one more wire to put on, and then
we'll see you back here in a second.
Okay, so there we go. We've got it soldered on the board, and it's gonna settle down. See how it'll settle down nicely, just like that. And you can see that we actually didn't have a complete flow through. So why don't we come back and just touch that up on this side. It just takes a second, and it'll make for an excellent solder connection. This one was almost perfect on the first shot, and there we go. Okay.
And don't forget, come in and snug these guys down with a little wrench, and then your board is built.
Okay, well done, everyone.
Let's start getting the rest of it together.
Oh, exciting.